Well, as I mentioned, proponents of the plan say it would help Winnipeg and 17 surrounding municipalities collaborate on everything from expanding wastewater treatment to developing more roads. But for some Manitobans, all Plan 2050 does is raise concerns. And people are so concerned that they showed up in droves to a public hearing about this plan in Niverville earlier this month. In fact, so many people turned up to that hearing, 600 people, it ended up being postponed. So what is it about Plan 2050? If you've been following this in the news, what is it about this plan that is striking fear in so many Manitobans? As leaders from Selkirk, Niverville, Headingley, St. Andrews, and East St. Paul describe this as, quote, forced involvement. St. Andrews Chief Administrative Officer Brent Olinik told CBC the fear is rooted in conspiracy.
Some of the feedback that's coming from residents in that is, quite frankly, right out there, right? Now it's becoming an issue of how do we get our message across what's really happening versus the message that's being created by special interest groups that, you know, have taken what's happening and turned it into some conspiracy theories, right? You know, I've heard everything from this will expedite toll roads coming up to you won't be able to leave your home. How do you bring the knowledge to the people and educate the people on what's really happening here? So I believe there's a gap there.
Cecil Rosner is my next guest, managing editor at the Investigative Journalism Foundation and author of Manipulating the Message, How Powerful Forces Shape the News. He's also former managing editor here at CBC Manitoba. Good morning.
Hi, Marcy.
So what do you make of this reaction we're seeing from some Manitobans to the 2050 plan? What surprises you about people packing the house and, you know, some of the meetings are being shut down? There's too many people.
I think the first thing we should talk about is that there's a trend. There's a trend that trust in government and institutions, in media, is low, and people are angry out there. And for a lot of legitimate reasons, there's a lot of anger out there. And so this tends to color a lot of the debate. It tends to produce a lot of overheated rhetoric around public policy issues. But I think the critical thing is people have to be cautious that, like, I'm a lifelong journalist. I tell reporters, be skeptical. Don't accept everything you hear. But at the same time, you have to be cautious about falling down the rabbit hole of conspiracy or being pulled down the rabbit hole of conspiracy theories. Because I find that anytime I start digging into those theories, you find that they profit certain sectors. There's some people who want to create chaos. They want to bring down governments. They want to advance their own specific interests. And I think a lot of those factors are at play in this thing we're seeing playing out around us in Manitoba. Anytime
a conspiracy takes off, as you all know, and then, you know, forces come in even to co-opt people to get deeper into something. And what's really at risk, too, is you miss out on some legitimate concerns that maybe are out there. So I just want to look at the fact that some of the leaders say that this plan are going to increase the complexity of their governments to do their own planning and make land use decisions. So I guess my question is, how do you address the conspiracy theories or get around that somehow without dismissing what might be some very valid concerns? Because those two things get mixed together, and then all of a sudden we're not really talking about Plan 2050 and how it could affect people's lives.
Totally. There are absolutely legitimate concerns. They have been voiced by some of the mayors and reeves at issue, but I think we need rational debate. We need rational debate and consultations. And then I think people have to do their own research. They have to look at the evidence. Don't just look at the latest social media post and immediately start sharing that with all your friends and family without having dug into what is really going on. Because if you look at some of those social media posts, and here's one, word for word, be ready to have your car taken away. Written, by the way, by someone who once put their name forward to be Premier of Manitoba.
That frightens me, okay.
Or so much for democracy. So I think it's that kind of rhetoric that does not help even the people who want to raise some very legitimate concerns.
So here's the $1 million question, and I don't even know that you'll have an answer to this, Cecil, but somebody reads, get ready to have your car taken away. They go to the meeting, they're a citizen, and they say, I read, my car is going to be taken away. The councillor or leader says, that's not in this plan, that has nothing to do with this, you know, you'll let your fears be put to rest. But then they still aren't, because someone beside them says, don't believe them or read my research or my version of this. Is there a way that you would suggest people sort of do their own research, as you said?
This is true, I think, for everything, not just on this issue, but just about anything you read in the news or you read on social media. The first thing, and this is good advice both for journalists and members of the public, what are the sources of information? Are they legitimate? Where is the evidence for assertions being made? Don't believe everything you read, no matter what the source is. So do be skeptical. Don't be cynical of everything that comes your way. And also go to multiple sources. Read widely. And then if you read widely about this very issue, you'll see that Winnipeg and Manitoba is not the first place this overheated rhetoric has started in. There have been demonstrations and all kinds of manifestations of this in other places, and reading about those is actually instructive to figure out what's going on here right now.
Because some of what this has been co-opted by, and we mentioned it earlier, is this idea around the conspiracy of the 15-minute city model, despite the fact that this plan is not a version of that model. And we saw that in Brandon. If you're listening, you might have been in Brandon. They had to shut down a meeting there. Some social media sites like X, formerly known as Twitter, now have community notes that essentially act as fact checks people can add. How helpful is that with dispelling information? Because somebody actually, Cecil, might be on there and thinking, well, this community note is it's updating the fact.
Yeah, I think you also have to be skeptical and cautious about that. We all know who is the leader of X these days, Elon Musk, and he himself has been pushing and promulgating various theories which don't stand up to scrutiny and evidence. So again, if you demand evidence of things, I think you all remember during the Olympics, there was a big controversy and a lot of overheated rhetoric about a boxer from Algeria who won a match. And there was a whole bunch of unsubstantiated rumors, a lot of which got promulgated on X, by the way. And again, if people dug into the facts, instead of just looking at the last post that they had seen and gotten all worked up about it, we would have had a much better conversation.
What if you're speaking, if someone's listening, Cecil, and you're talking to someone who really believes a conspiracy, and you've done your research and you've looked into this and you understand that it is a conspiracy? How do you help them without shaming them? Because the last thing you want to do is say your concerns are not valid. They may not be factual. They may not be valid in the context of what we're talking about, but you don't want them to move away from the conversation and maybe go deeper into the whole of conspiracy.
Yeah, I teach a course at the University of Manitoba and the University of Winnipeg that deals with misinformation and disinformation. It's useful actually to figure out what is the difference between those two things. Misinformation can be otherwise honest, well-intentioned people sharing things without having full knowledge that spreads wrong information, whereas disinformation has the deliberate intent to mislead. And sometimes I will see a post on Facebook or social media from one of my family members and friends in which they're clearly wrong. They're not evil disinformation purveyors. They're just been swept up in unknowingly spreading misinformation, and better education and a devotion to doing more of your own research, I think, is the best way to try to address those things.
How hopeful are you that we'll return to, as you said, rational discourse?
I'm really not sure, because it's actually scary when stuff on social media starts having real world effects of canceled meetings and protests, and that is a scary phenomenon. It's happened in other places. It's happened in Canada before. So I think it's good that we're digging into the issue. I think people should dig into the issue. There are legitimate things to dig into in this plan. But look, let's step back for a second. This is a plan that looks forward 25 years. There is time to figure this out. There's time to debate and discuss this in a rational manner, and I sure hope that happens.
Thank you very much for coming in.
Thanks, Marcy.
Cecil Rosner, Managing Editor at the Investigative Journalism Foundation. He is also author of Manipulating the Message, How Powerful Forces Shape the News. He's a former Managing Editor here at CBC Manitoba.
Thank you for watching the CBC Manitoba YouTube channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe. For the latest breaking news and top stories, download the CBC News app.